Hey, so we're going to have a conversation about being a minority and what that means and all the different aspects of being a minority. And so we have 5 volunteers in class who in different ways are minorities. And so why don't we start with Aish? And so you can say like your name and where you're from and how you are a minority.
Hi, I'm Aishwarya. I'm a sophomore. I'm majoring in IST. I'm an Indian, but I was born and raised in Dubai. So I'm a minority because I'm a Hindu who grew up in Dubai.
In a Muslim country.
Yep.
So Dubai is a city in the United Arab Emirates, for those who haven't learned that yet. Okay, Aish. All right.
My name's Joe, or Joseph. I'm a junior majoring in chemical engineering. I'm Lebanese, and I grew up in Kuwait. I'm a minority because I'm an Arab Christian, which isn't very common. And Kuwait's a primarily Muslim country. Like, the whole population's Muslim.
Yeah,
except
it's
for
like
foreigners.
1% Christian probably in Kuwait, right?
I don't believe there are any Kuwaiti Christians. The Christians mostly are made up of like people who live there.
Well, if there's an old Christian population, really old, there's an old Jewish population in Kuwait still. Not very many people, but I was at the Jewish synagogue in Kuwait one time. Okay, so Joseph. Wait, hang on.
Hi, I'm Marika. I'm a junior majoring in global and international studies and minoring in journalism. I'm from Long Island, New York, and I'm biracial. I'm half Greek, half black.
Half Greek, half black.
Yes.
And you speak Greek?
Yes, I speak Greek.
Uh-huh. Okay. So there are 2 or 3 people in class who speak Greek, by the way.
Okay.
Okay.
My name is Seven. I just go by Sev. I use they, them pronouns. I'm a sophomore majoring in film production, and I'm a minority for a couple of reasons, but I'm non-binary and I'm black, so.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Non-binary, not and black. Yep.
Hi, I'm Courtney. I'm from an eastern suburb of Pittsburgh. I'm a sophomore and majoring in middle-level math education. And I grew up, my family struggled financially, and I lived in a wealthier area and a wealthy school district.
So you, struggling financially, like working class,
Yeah.
grew up in an upper middle class neighborhood.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Really? There are quite a number of students in class. There are a few people in class anyway who volunteered who are. So let me ask you, and anybody can take this question if you want. When you hear the word minority, how's that fit for you? How's it fit? You know, how comfortable are you with the with that characterization? How much does it characterize you, minority? Anyone can take this. How's it fit?
I think that it's I'm honestly fine with it because I feel like in some way, even though I live and I grew up in a Muslim country, I was still able to embrace my culture, my religion in every way possible.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like it hasn't really affected me in any way, and I'm okay with it. So yeah.
So you are a minority, and you are a minority in a way that you were nonetheless able to be all of who you are.
Yeah,
Would you
but
say
at
that?
the same time, I was because I was able to, like I said, embrace every bit of my culture.
Yep.
In the
Yep.
Muslim country.
Uh-huh.
So yeah.
Yeah, and there are lots of Indians in Dubai, right?
Yeah.
I stayed 2 different times. I stayed in the gold quarters,
Oh,
the Indian quarters.
Yeah.
It's just, I felt like I was in India, Yeah. How about somebody else? How's that fit for you, being a minority?
I would say that by definition, I grew up in a way that was different than the people I was surrounded with. But I also think that my financial standing and my family's wealth could be hidden from my outside perspective or from my outward appearance. So I think that it's different than being a minority based on like race, because you can't tell.
Okay, so would you, if I hadn't considered, if you knew what this class was going to be about, it's going to be about being a minority, right? Would you have volunteered for this class? Would you have said, oh yeah, that's me?
I probably wouldn't have, because I wouldn't want to at all lessen the voices of people that are more oppressed than me.
Okay, hang on. So the idea is you're seeing minority through a uniquely, like a race or gender lens.
I think that by definition, it definitely applies to my situation, but I think that just like the connotation and what most people think of, or definitely the way that I initially thought of the word.
Yep.
Was
Okay. Yep.
race
No, I
or
think you're right.
ethnicity.
No, I think you're the same as most everybody in this room. If they think about minority, they're not thinking about any social class as being part of that, right? It really is. We don't use it that way, and so yeah, I mean you're right. But as a sociologist, I step outside of that and use it that way, right? To say like, well, hang on, let's just broaden this lens of minority and see what it really is. Somebody else, Sev, how about you? How's the word fit for you or not fit for you? Or do you ever use it?
I only really use it in essays where I feel like it'll give me a leg up, to be honest. Like, that's the reality of the situation. I know that I'm a minority. I don't really have a problem with that. I don't find like solace in being like a minority because I think a lot of people think of like being a minority as like one big great community, but like I'm not in like all minority communities, and so I wouldn't like say that for myself. Like I do share the same experiences as other Black people, as some other people of color, as other trans people, and like so on and so forth, but I wouldn't say that it's like all-encompassing of a definition for me.
Yeah, right. For you, it goes by like, so if you think about what Courtney just said, and you think about how most people see minority, that word, you don't fit there. Like, I mean, you have to take that lens and broaden it really far for you, right? To encompass all the different parts of who you are. How about anybody else? Does it fit? Or because we can, Brooke, go ahead.
I feel like honestly, like it wasn't growing up. It was never anything that I really thought much about. Like I knew I obviously wasn't the majority, but I didn't really realize like what it meant to be a minority, I guess, until I came here. Like I'd never really growing up said I'm a minority. I knew I wasn't the majority, but because like everyone I'm around when I'm back in Lebanon is Christian, and like we all do the same things, and it's just the environment I'm in. I never really. So
in Kuwait, is that a? I mean, here we use it all the time. Well, we've gotten kind of. Well, I'm going to get to the use of the actual word, right? Because if you'll notice. This semester, I rarely use the word minority throughout the whole semester. We're using it now for a particular reason, but I rarely use the word, right? But in Kuwait, do they not use a word that's similar to this, or?
I wouldn't, honestly, not, like, I can't remember the last time that there was any equivalent word that was used to describe. There's like, you say like foreigners, but it's like expats.
Yeah,
it's just people
right.
who live in the country who aren't from the country, but like no one sees that in a condescending manner. Like it doesn't have any sort of connotation to it.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. How about you? Does that fit for you?
Yeah, so I would probably say that growing up like Greek and Black, just my dad is Black, my mom is Greek, it just kind of made me more aware of my surroundings, I would say, because Long Island is very, very segregated, one of the most segregated places in the nation. And just having that like made me very hyper aware of different things that were happening. And then I was made more aware, I think, at Penn State because it just like, it's definitely more diverse here. I wouldn't say it's diverse, but it's more diverse here than at home because my graduating class was of like over 300 people was 3 black kids, me being one of them. And so there wasn't very much representation. And I feel like for me personally, there's more representation here, not nearly as much as there should be. But yeah.
So how often does being like your status as, and like representation, but I'm going to continue to use the word minority or minoritized or something. How often does that enter your day-to-day thinking?
I would say, like, I don't really know how to like answer it. I think sometimes I think like because I am like lighter skinned that I can be like, because like we were talking about before class, there are like a lot of Greek people that have like features similar to mine, and I often get mistaken for being Dominican or Puerto Rican. So it makes me like question like, I don't know, like my blackness, I guess sometimes, like what validates it and stuff like that. So that's what I go through thinking. But I would say that like a majority of my friends here like are black, so I definitely see like the black struggle more through them as well.
Okay. Yeah, and being biracial or multiracial, right? Because if we did a DNA test on you, we're going to find you find that you're quite multiracial, right? Like I wouldn't use bi, I would use multi for you. And being that in itself is such a unique category of something. Like Sev, you started to get at this, right? I was asking about, I just asked the question, how often does it enter your thinking? And you started to say something about, yeah, well, so for a lot of people, it's like it encompasses a lot or something. So I'm just going to ask you that question. How often does this enter your thinking, like day to day? Because people, and I'm going to tell you why I'm asking this question. There are a lot of people who don't see themselves as minoritized in any way, right? Let's say like you, Courtney, right? Who have this idea that people who have some kind of minority status are thinking about this all the time, like every day, every moment, right? Because you hear this. You certainly hear the criticism, the conversations of people who are kind of critical of multicultural efforts and so on. It's just like, oh, stop thinking about it. You're always thinking about, always talking about, et cetera. So let me ask you, so how often is this part of your consciousness, day to day, moment to moment? I don't know.
It's not really something that I think about at all. Like, I'm aware that I'm a minority, but it's not really something that's on my mind unless it's like a relevant topic in like a classroom or something or other like that.
So unless it's like it comes out, but otherwise you're not like walking down the street thinking about it. Yeah. Aish, how about you?
Yeah, I agree. I honestly I never think about the fact that I'm a minority. Like she said, like I'm aware of the fact that I am a minority, but it just never comes I don't know. I just never think about it.
So I want to go with kind of what Joe said, right? Yeah. So do you think, but the degree to which you do think about it, right? Because I'm gonna say, you said I never think about it, but clearly you do sometimes, right? I mean, once in a while. I mean, oh, hang on. Let me just ask you. Do you think I'm going to tell her what she thinks, because that's my job, right? Let me tell you how you really think about life.
Okay, sure.
Do you never think about it more often or less often here than back in Dubai?
Okay, yeah. So I'd say I think about it a lot more over here.
Here?
Yeah.
What's behind that? Can you say?
Honestly, I don't know. I just feel I think one of the main reasons why I think about it a lot more over here is because, like we said earlier in Dubai, there's just so many Indians.
Yeah.
And I've grown up with only Indians. I went to an all-Indian school, so I feel I've never really felt like a minority in Dubai.
Yeah.
But over here, it's a lot more diverse and
yeah. It'd be interesting if you had moved here to the U.S. from Dubai to like Edison, New Jersey, right? Which is like little India in the U.S.
I have a friend who lives in Edison, and she always tells me that it's basically like a mini India.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. You can. Right. So I wonder if you did that, if you would be like, hey, back in Dubai, or I'm in Mumbai, or hey. So what's the difference? Let me ask you a question. This is probably not going to be the two of you, but the three of you, maybe. And we could start with you, Cordy. What's the difference between being a minority or being minoritized? Do you have any sense of that? Have you heard that word, minoritized?
I haven't really heard it in a different sense than the word minority.
Uh-huh. I wouldn't expect that you've really heard this very much. How about the two of you? Do you hear minoritized? Because it's like it started to really emerge about 5 years ago. People were talking about it because minority started to have a negative connotation to it. So people's like minority was almost like disparaging, oh, those minorities, right? So it's like minoritized is like empowering in some way. Do you all hear that word? The two of you?
I don't really hear it that often, but when I first heard minoritized, I thought of like being put into a box sort of like being a minority, so I didn't like hear of it and think of it as like uplifting.
Uh-huh. Would you expect them to to know that word?
Possibly, I don't know.
It's like a word that I've seen in articles, like not many times.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't really think of it as uplifting either. I think of it kind of like you do, kind of as like being tokenized,
Like
something like that.
Like a minority is like tokenized.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's where minoritized kind of came out as a way to get around that. Okay, so here's another question. We're going to go in a very different direction, by the way. So I wrote this one down because I want to be really clear about it. So how is being a minority different than being unique or a member of a group who stands out somehow? Okay? How is being a minority different than being being someone who's just really unique, right? And just someone who really stands out. So like maybe you're like an amazing violin player at the age of 8, right? And like you're a minority, right? There are many different people in this room who are minorities because in the sense, and we're thinking like just the basic numerically, right? You're a minority because you're like have this really unique experience and nobody else does that, right? And so like, whoa, so you are very much a minority. So how much is being a minority in the way that we would talk about it in this class different than just being a really unique individual who stands out, right? And then when is being a minority the same thing? So anyway, let me go there. How is it? And by the way, if anybody in class wants to answer this question too, I'll bring a mic up to you because this is really interesting. We could do the whole class on this question. So how is being a minority different than just being really unique?
I guess the first thing that came to my mind is they kind of go hand in hand, but they're also not the same thing. Because being told you're a minority, you're also still put in a box that describes a group of people.
Mm-hmm.
Being unique is more so like that is a specific experience to one person or a very select group of people. I think you can be a minority but not unique.
Mm-hmm.
And you can also just be a unique human being.
Uh-huh.
So it's like personally I don't associate the two being the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like obviously you have unique experiences as a minority because you may see the world differently because of your own like traditions or culture or whatever. Yeah.
So when is your minority status? When does it become an issue of concern as opposed to something that's just like this thing that it's apolitical. Doesn't matter.
For me personally, it's mostly like connecting with people. Like I grew up in a country where I really feel like I've adopted the culture, like Khaliji culture. Like I grew up there. I'm there like my whole life. and then you kind of leave that area. And you try and
do they see you that way though? When they look at you, they know you're from Lebanon. Do they see you that way?
no. Well, not as much. I wouldn't say no, because there's still a very clear difference between the ways I carry myself and I interact with people versus someone who grew up in Lebanon carries themselves and interacts with people.
Okay. Right.
I would see myself relating more to someone from the GCC, like the Gulf region,
Yep.
than I do with people who grew up in Lebanon, just because the experiences are so different.
Yep.
So in that sense, I would say I had a unique experience, and so do my friends who are Lebanese and Christian and grew up.
Yep.
But I wouldn't, like, how do I put this? Arab Christians are a minority,
Yeah.
but that experience isn't necessarily unique unless it was specific in a certain way.
Because there's a culture sense,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I have many black and brown friends who are far, even though they won't admit it, I have who are far more Americanized into American culture than I am, by far, and far more Americanized into white American culture than I am. And even though you wouldn't think it by looking at them, by even talking to them, meeting them, right? Dude, do you have a...
Yeah, I got stuff to say.
All right, go for it, man.
All right, so I can see how the two concepts of uniqueness and being a minority are sort of similar and being related. But I think the fundamental difference is that if you're unique, you're really just blazing your own trail, and it's more so focused on your journey and the decisions you're making and the passions that you have that really, define your uniqueness moving through the world. Whereas minority is more of like about factors about your journey, where you're placed into a situation where sociologically, yeah.
Yep.
And furthermore, the whole minority status thing is more so like used as a group identifier, whereas truly being unique is just blazing your own trail.
Yep, okay, I got you. All right, so, wait. When you think about the word minority, you see that from within the lens of, it's part of somebody, as my wife would say, as somebody's sociological address. It's connected to these other nodes in the culture, right?
Yeah.
Of like, whatever it is, like place in a stratification system.
Yeah, and just like factors that directly influence the kind of journey that people are on.
Okay, all right. Somebody else. How is being a minority different than being just a unique individual?
I think also going off of that, it's like being a minority, also there's many, like you said, being put in a box. There are just many things that are already like preconceived notions that people are going to have about you, especially when it's like you can physically tell that someone is a minority, like being black or something like that, or being brown. And it's like you already have these stereotypes like made about you, whereas being unique, you might not be able to see it as clearly like on the outside, which is true, could be true for a minority as well. But being unique is more of like everyone was kind of just repeating, being like oneself, like on your own journey or something like that. Where being a minority, you're more scrutinized in like a group where you could be unique, but no one's going to look at that besides like past the point of you being a minority. Like that's what you are looked at first.
They're going to see that. They're going to see that about you immediately. Hey, Courtney. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I wanted to add, I have a similar perspective on that. I was thinking a similar thing with associating the word minority and the difference between that and just uniqueness with a set of disadvantages that somebody has based on not being in the majority.
Yeah.
So whether that has something to do with race or like status, like a set of disadvantages that are directly related to not being a part of the majority or being in a smaller group of wherever you are.
But is being a minority always about disadvantage? Like, is that where your mind goes? Is that what you're saying? It's not always that?
I think I don't think that is the only thing associated with being a minority. I think that that for me is what distinguishes it from being just about uniqueness. Because minority also has a lot to do with like community, I feel like, for a lot of people, and can be about community and like connecting with others. And that's uniqueness in a way, but I think uniqueness sort of doesn't have the connotation of having disadvantages as much.
Yeah. Okay. And but there's also like a power there that comes along. Like, so I'm thinking about your life, right? And what if people who were in your community, right, who were at an economic disadvantage, who weren't as economically fulfilled. How did you say it? You said it in a really nice way.
I don't remember.
Who are not economically advantaged, let's say. I don't know, right? Okay?
Yeah.
I wonder if like people came together and saw people who were your social class, right? Your strata, came together and saw themselves as minoritized in some way. Like, I wonder the degree to which that would be empowering.
I think that it would. I think that in my area, not many people knew my own financial situation. It was sort of like a taboo topic. And it was sort of viewed as like embarrassing to not be as wealthy as the people you're surrounded by. And so I think that a lot of the people that may have been able to like join together and feel some sort of unity, they didn't know each other. They didn't know the financial situation of the people around them.
So
there's a lot of people that wouldn't know.
And they would hide it.
Yeah.
Which is different than the four of you, because she has a minority status where it's like it's to your advantage, or you used the word shame, right? There's a shame that goes along with that. So it's like, well, it's to your advantage to kind of hide that because you don't want to feel the feelings of shame and you don't want other people to know it. The four of you don't have that. Like, it's very different, right? But for hers, this is a different kind of, which there are lots of other pieces to it, right? So that's the irony, right? You, the white person who's sitting up here, has the one minority status, A, class, economic disadvantage, which is one that we don't really talk about at all, very rarely talk about, and B, the one that's about class and the one that has shame attached to it, which is bizarre, as the sole white person sitting in a chair, right?